Hello, welcome to Allen Baptist Church Daily Bible Study. We're looking at characters of the Bible in an alphabetical order, and we're at the letter P, and today a very famous character of the New Testament, Peter. Peter, you hear him referred to with different names in the Gospels. He's mentioned in all of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in the book of Acts, also in Galatians, and of course, he wrote 1st and 2nd Peter, two books in the Bible. But he's referred to as Simeon in Acts. Simon, you hear him referred to as that. It's the Greek equivalent of Simeon. And then Cephas, that's the Aramaic form of the name Peter. Peter comes from the Greek word Petros, which is a sort of a translation of Cephas. So you hear different names used for him. He's referred to as Simon Bar-Jonah. That just simply means the son of Jonah. And so all of those are the same guy, Peter. Lots of stories about Peter. I would encourage you to find him in the Gospels, to read about him, to read about his walk with the Lord. You know, he starts out with foot and mouth disease. He oftentimes spoke up and got himself in trouble. He's the one that denied the Lord and wept bitterly about it, but he's also the one that preached on Pentecost. You know, so Peter, he sometimes was wishy-washy. At first, he understood the Lord taught him that the gospel was for the whole world, not just for Jews. And yet later in Galatians, Paul refers to the fact that he kind of fell back on that and stopped building friendships with the Gentiles and joining in with the Jews who thought you had to be a Jew. And Paul had to correct him. But you know, in all of this, he got it right eventually. I want us to see one little vignette from Peter in Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 23. This is an encounter with Peter and Jesus. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, "Who do you say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. I also say to you that you are Peter," that was Petros, remember, "and upon this rock, Petros," a play on words, "I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven." Then he warned the disciples that they should tell no one that he was the Christ, or Messiah. Christ, the Greek form of Messiah, the Hebrew. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised up on the third day. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord. This shall never happen to you." But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's." We see in this the fallibility of human beings. We can do good things and then do wrong things and can be all intertwined. Peter was no different. When they were seeing answering the question, who was Jesus, Peter answered correctly. And Jesus said, "Look, you got it from heaven. Flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you. You heard from heaven. You believed what God said about me, and you spoke it." And he said, you're a rock, but upon this bedrock, Petros, this bedrock of faith, believing what God says without any equivocation, that's what I'm going to build my church on. And and Peter got it right. And that's what faith is all about, hearing what God says, for example, for us in His Word, believing it, and acting on it. But then Jesus told them what the plan was of His plan of dying for our sins and being raised on the third day. And Peter said, no, 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 no. Immediately at that point, he had just heard what God said and by faith believed it and spoke it. And now he has heard what God says and he's rejecting it and not following it. And Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. So here's Peter having expressed by faith exactly what God says about Jesus. And then when Jesus fully says what God's plan is with him, he rejects it. We have to be careful not to allow, as Jesus said, what Peter did in the second instance where he had to say, get behind me, Satan. He says you're setting your mind on not on God's interest, but on man's. We've got to be careful as followers of Christ that we keep our focus on God's plan, not our own. God bless you.